Hello, today I'm joined by Robin Young, CEO of Amur Minerals, the exploration and development company progressing the Kumanye project in Far East Russia. Robin, welcome.
Thank you.
Today we're here to answer a few questions that we've received from shareholders, but before we move on to that, do you mind giving us an update on the company?
So the GKZ, Taiyo, the mine plan, and the detailed engineering work is really critical, and this provides a basis for which the plant can be constructed. If a company takes on the compilation of a Western bankable feasibility study first and does all the detailed engineering in accordance with Western standards, when you go to construct the plant, often it will not meet the specifications of the Russian regulatory agencies. So it's very important that the Russian side is done first. Then that study is passed onward to a Western company that is qualified to compile bankable feasibility studies and is well experienced with the Russian process. There are situations that have happened in the past where companies have done the bankable feasibility study first using a Western basis, gone into the construction phase and not been able to start the operation. This has happened with iron ore operations and some gold operations that I'm aware of. Moving on, I think that it's important that we also understand what has happened while we were compiling the Taiyo that has significantly altered the February 2019 pre-feasibility study. The first and most significant step is Gipro-Nickel's confirmation that we can generate a copper concentrate. 50% of the copper can be captured in that concentrate. The importance of this is that in the PFS, we had zero payability for copper. Now, with the ability to recover a separate copper concentrate, we get paid for 95% of the recovered copper. This is a substantial addition to the revenues for the company. Also, we've had an update in the reserves. This is both with the GKZ, which is the most important one, and RPM, who's reported a JORC resource estimate as well. These numbers appear to be mutually supportive at this point in time. We can also recover, one of the other benefits is that we can recover minor payables for PGMs and precious metals. We've also been looking at the opportunities of generating a battery precursor product. This includes the use of or use in construction of a flash smelter to generate a low-grade matte or a high-grade matte, and also the generation of an MHP or a mixed hydroxide precipitate. Recovery in a mixed hydroxide precipitate allows to recover additional metals such as platinum, palladium, gold, silver, cobalt on a much more efficient basis. And also the nickel is quite commonly rewarded with a premium payment. Looking beyond that, there's something that's very important that has been developing over recent years, which is there a greenhouse gas carbon footprint scenario that we have been looking at and evaluating? We have indeed done high-level assessments for looking at the examination of wind, solar, natural gas, hydrocarbon, or excuse me, hydroelectric, coal, and also fuel oil for the site. We're looking at also the potential of the replacement of mobile mining fleets using electric. The chemistry of our waste rock is also quite beneficial in that it has successfully been noted that CO2 can be entrained in the tailings and also in the waste dumps. The composition of our waste rock products is very good and well suited for this consideration. And when we take a look at the operational components right now, one of the key elements that we have is all our rail transport is already tied into an electrical system. So there won't be any of the greenhouse gases that are produced from the project at that basis. So this is to give you a bit of a background as to where we are and where we're headed. The key is staying on track with the Russian work and making sure that that project can be constructed in the quickest, swiftest basis, and that the Western bankable feasibility study that follows on wraps around the Russian work and can be utilized for financing long-term through a consortium of external Russia companies. So with that description and input up front, I'd like to give Megan the chance to ask many of the questions that have come in. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you very much for that update, Robin. Now we'll move on to investor questions. We'll try and get through as many as we can, and also we've tried to avoid some duplications. But first question, the RNS dated the 20th of August states that a nickel price of $6 a pound and a copper price of $2.70 a pound has been used in the Taiyo submission. Are you able to state what MPV figure this produces?
It's important to understand where that $6 and $2.70 comes from. Those are actual average prices for the 2 years previous implementation of the GKZ work. This is the basis upon which Russia works. It's not typical of a Western company where we attempt to identify a long-range forward-looking pricing. So it's significantly different than what we used in the PFS, which was $8 a pound. Have we got an NPV to report at this time? No. And the reason we don't is because the Taiyo is not yet complete. And it is in final stages of review. And once it's completed, there will be numbers within that report. Remember, the Taiyo in this case is to define the reserve that is at a low cutoff grade. So we don't know what the numbers will be. We'll just have to wait for the results to be issued in the near term.
Thank you. Robin, you stated in a recent interview that you'd be releasing the Taiyo figures in the fourth quarter of 2021. When will the Taiyo information be issued to shareholders? Will it include PFS comparisons?
The Taiyo is in its final stages of compilation right now. It is the fourth quarter and should be released by certainly the end of this quarter. Looking forward, yes, we can compare it back against some of the figures of the PFS, but bear in mind, this Taiyo is new work, it's breaking new ground, and direct one-on-one comparisons cannot be made. But we can provide a breakdown of the tables showing operating costs, operating production parameters, as well as capital and sustaining capital figures.
Thanks. And the recently released interim financial statements excluded any note regarding Taiyo costs. It appears that no cash expenditure was incurred in relation to the Taiyo. Can you explain this?
Yes, it's the basis on how Russians bill you. Generally, when you have a contract with them, you pay 50% up front, and then you pay increments along the way. There has been no costs that have been reported in that because there were no costs for the period. We had basically paid for all of the activities except for the final filing fees that the GKZ requires.
Okay, thanks. Within a recent RNS, the company advised that the underground mining solution may still be used. What was the outcome of the trade-off studies undertaken by RPM in relation to the open pit as opposed to the open pit and underground mining?
The current production report for the GKZ report itself is totally open pit operation. The RPM study work that has been done in the past indicates that when you reach about a 4 or a 5 to 1 stripping ratio, you need to be looking at an underground possible underground operation. You have to bear in mind that you don't mine all the ore from underground. You need to leave pillars in place, which leaves about 25% of the ore. So you're losing some of your revenues, but at the same time, you're recovering additional profit because the stripping ratio exceeds that of an underground operation. At this time, what we see is a long-term open pit operation with consideration to move to an underground operation in the future.
Okay, thank you. In the recent RNS, it appears that C1 cash costs have risen substantially. Are you able to clarify?
Not at this time. I have to wait until the Taiyo comes back in. Remember, this is a back and forth thing. It's a negotiated agreement between the GKZ and the company who's compiled our Taiyo for us and ourselves. So there is a point in time where these numbers should be cast more in concrete, and we can revisit the C1 costs more effectively and more accurately.
Great. When will you apply to extend the mining license beyond 2035, and what is the process?
The process is when you're near the end of the mine life, say 2 to 3 years out, if you still have ore that is going to be processed that is going to exceed the capacity of that 2 to 3 year life, then you can apply for the extension. So this is an end of mine life task, and that will be evaluated probably in, say, 2025, 2030.
What is the next deadline after the mine plan submitted per Russian rules?
Well, what we'll be doing then is we'll be working with all the various agencies to get boots on the ground. One of the key operations will be getting the final road designs in place, and also getting the environmental baseline data all acquired and put together.
Why has the offtake not been made binding?
If you sign an offtake agreement today, you do run the risk of tensioning and any future ongoing potential transactions, such as a joint venture. You could be eliminating potential partners. You also have to unravel it if something comes up. Let's say that one of the top 3 off-takers has struck an agreement with you, and it's a binding agreement, and then you find out that technology is advanced where you can make a good quality product such as an MHP product in lieu of the binding agreement. So undertaking a binding agreement right now can actually cause more problems than it would help.
In terms of the BFS, when will work commence and when will it be concluded? Will Amur be using a top consultancy, and do you have a company in mind? How will COVID restrictions affect this particular work stream?
Absolutely. When it comes to using a company, you have to have a reputable company. Otherwise, the PFS is barely worth the paper that is written on. You do need to have a company that fully understands the Russian process. In this case, there are two companies that have been working in and out of Russia for years. They're Western recognized. We've used them both, RPM and SRK. So they know how Russia works, and they would know how to wrap a Western bankable feasibility study around the GKZ work, the mine plans, the Russian detailed engineering work, so that a financing document or a BFS document itself can be compiled. That work is underway at this point in time. The one key issue that must be remembered is that it's the Russian reserve estimate that serves as the basis, not the JORC Western estimate. But it's important to have both of them to make sure that they're mutually supportive and that the operation is well grounded in solid engineering fact.
Thank you. The output for the mine has been shown as 6 million tonnes per annum for some years. The recent RNS indicates that this will soon be increased to 11.2 million tonnes per annum. Are you able to explain the trade-offs for this increase, for example, upfront capex or the dual track road? And what is the effect on the NPV? Was the effect on the NPV marginal or significant?
Okay, we have to be really careful on this 11.2 million tons. That is a number that the Russians feel could be sustained. It is not the design throughput. That is the 6 million tons a year. It is possible to expand to that according to their figures and what the GKZ has concluded. So the trade-off is time. When will enough throughput capacity or demand for the product exceed the 6 million ton a year? But 6 million is the case that we're going to go to. The Taiyo itself has taken a look at two things that are very different than what we had in the PFS. One is in the PFS. We were looking at a very well scheduled one lane wide road where we would organize our transport of our product to the rail station and supplies to the mine site. In this case, the GKZ and the team have decided that we should probably consider using a 2-lane road. The other option, the other item in this, which is substantial, is the construction of a power line from the hydroelectric dam to the mine site, precluding the need to put in a site-generated power station, say of Caterpillar generators.
Thank you. Metal recovery and payability percentages appear to be key in improving the MPV figure. What has the company done to improve these percentages, such as the amount of nickel or copper being paid for increases at the 6 million tonnes per annum output level?
The increase of mining production capacity does not affect payability. Payability is established by the offtake company. So they're the ones who will say, we will pay you 71% of the nickel, and we won't pay you for any of the other metals that are contained in that product. In recent numbers, and what we did for the Taiyo itself is we went to the various market makers and sellers of the concentrate and asked them to requote some new numbers. And in that process, there has been a change from the PFS, where we now are seeing that, and also the addition of the copper concentrate, that we can see that we're going to get, that we will recover a higher payability. Obviously, for the copper, we went from 0 to 95%, and for the nickel price varies based. It's a price range that is varied that varies based on the commodity price of nickel that day. So we are looking at various increases and improvements in those offtake agreements as well.
Okay. The current cash position would appear to be approximately $8 million. Cash expenditure appears to be running at approximately $2 million per annum. Is one option for the company simply produce the mine plan as required and wait for a takeover approach? If so, why not reduce the annual expenditure to a lower figure?
Yes, we have approximately $8 million in cash in the bank right now. And we are expending about $2 million per annum. That includes a lot of the cost is for our labor and our full staffing that we have located in the Russian Far East. We definitely will be compiling the mine plan as a requirement of our licensing, and to continue that work. That work is projected to range anywhere from, say, $300,000 to $1 million, depending on which company you look at and who's providing what level of work. That has to be assessed to identify which is the most appropriate company to actually compile the acceptable work. To reduce any further, our staffing is, we would be reducing staff in Russia, and that would not be beneficial to completing the project, because they do a lot of the information gathering and reviews of the work that's being compiled.
Okay. Previously, the company has said that it would advise on the percentage of capital expenditure in rubles opposed to US dollars. Can you advise what percentage has been used in the Taiyo? Is it proposed to still buy less expensive Russian equipment, or have alternatives been found?
The Taiyo is completely Russian-based cost. And to address that is that for the currency change at this moment, the currency rate, what we're seeing is over the last few years, it's been 70 to 75 rubles to the US dollar. So on a sensitivity basis at this point in time, we're not seeing much of a sensitivity to currency fluctuations. Most of the equipment that is being scheduled for purchasing is Russian-based equipment. Some of it's Chinese, and most of the mobile truck fleet that we've been picking so far, all the mining fleet, has been Caterpillar equipment. There is an alternative where we could possibly take a look at using Belarus trucks out of Belarus, which would reduce the costs capital cost for that fleet itself by about 30%.
The capital expenditure for the project is now $1 billion US. What does this include? For instance, does it include the 2-lane roads? Additionally, the PFS excluded any contingency. Typically, this is shown as 10%. Is a contingency included, and at what rate? And what is a sustaining expenditure?
The Taiyo right now, and I've alluded to this earlier, includes a power line, which was not included earlier in the PFS, and the 2-lane road, which doubles the cost of the road. So those are the two primary factors that indicate a potential total capital cost of $1 billion. This does not mean that that is how ultimately the operation will be constructed, because we do know that we can generate power on site using diesel fuel, and that would certainly reduce the capital cost expenditure of power line versus generator sets. The PFS, we've stated in the past, is that we did not put a hard line contingency factor on that. Many of the construction costs and quotes that have come into that PFS study included what are called regional adjustment factors. This includes a temperature, are you in, what part of the Siberian tundra are you in? Those all have contingency factors and pricing added into it that account for what the Russians consider to be their contingency. We did not add another contingency on top of that. And we did not, and unfortunately, that was not really well clarified on our part. The other thing is that it's stated that the question asks if there's normally a 10% rate on contingency. Yes, but that's when you're at a bank of a feasibility stage. Actually, a contingency should probably be closer to 25% at a pre-feasibility stage. But moving forward, all the contingency factors are built into the Taiyo into the Taiyo study itself. And these are all based on a book of parameters as to how a company should build their contingencies into the project.
The company has stated that finance for the BFS will be provided at asset level. Can further clarity be given on this point? For instance, is it anticipated that the off-taker will provide the finance?
The off-taker can provide finance, but that obviously is going to be much further down the line when the detailed engineering and all the design work and the construction, you're moving into the construction phase and you're awarding contracts. That's when an off-taker would possibly consider it, along with banks. Remember, as soon as somebody's locked in for financing, you tension a deal and you will eliminate partners that could possibly come into the deal for financing, some banks, for instance, and you can also add other, and some of these off-takers can bring in partners. So that's the transaction for off-taking and locking them in. Yes, it can be done, but it should be considered carefully in the future.
The tax rates are not shown within the PFS or the Taiyo updates. Please can you confirm the net profits tax and the metal royalties tax?
Yes, the net profits tax has been set where it's waived for the first 5 years. Then during the next 5 years, years 6 through 10, your net profits tax is set at 50% the rate, which would be a 10% net profits tax. At year 11, the net profits tax kicks into the full 20%. Metal royalties tax is also, it's been stated that in the question that it's a 7% rate that's being used. That's not correct. It's 8%. And it does increase incrementally. In the first 2 years of production, you pay 0% metals royalty tax. At year 11, it has returned to a total of 8%. Okay, and this is for all metals that are recovered into a concentrate in the form and the product that we're planning on producing at this point in time.
Does the board of directors need to be beefed up on the commercial development side?
What we're looking at this point in time is that we have Paul Gazzard, who is based in London, who's done lots of financing and lots of project work, and is presently the CEO of another company that is doing lots of financing itself. With Tom Bowens, Tom Bowens himself has done a transaction where he has sold on the copper project Malmish into Russian copper. So he's got the experience of having dealt with Russians himself. Robert Schaefer is more exploration based and oriented, and has done transactions and deals around the world. But at this point in time, the real focus and the lion's share of the work that's being done in internal Russia at this point is being conducted by myself, and looking at and speaking with various companies, such as who will do the mine plan, what is the results of the GKZ report, how's it working out, and also taking a look at potential offtake agreements, companies, and also the transport conditions, the operational site conditions, etc.
Recently, we have seen a good deal of M&A activity within the sector. However, today, no big investors have taken a significant shareholding in Amur. Does the company have a plan to attract such investors or institutional investors? Whilst COVID has been a big issue, have any investors or institutions been to site, or are any site visits planned?
There's a lot of this question is related to insider information, and whether a person has visited the site or not visited the site. I can't speak about that, or I couldn't speak about that, because that really is indicating that what our activities are at this point in time. But yes, we have noted in the last year and a half, and we've seen it in various professional reports that we receive from the likes of BDO and Standard & Poor's, that merger and acquisition activity is up, and that one of the major considerations is always our location. We are in Russia, and that does cause some consternation for some financial institutions. Russia is on a sanctions list, and you have to make sure that any and all work that we undertake is done by an unsanctioned entity within Russia. So these are activities that are very, very important, and we anticipate that our best source of investors and institutional investors will likely come out of Russia.
Looking at other nickel projects in development, most are looking at the carbon footprint and the use of automated electric vehicles as part of their transport fleet. Has the company given this area much consideration? Similarly, have you looked into hydropower?
Yes, if you take a look at one of the options we evaluated early on was a construction of our own hydroelectric dam, which is very, very cheap power. The problem is the length of time it takes to buy all the equipment, install it, and build the dam, and then let the dam fill with water behind it. That hydroelectric is very, very challenging, and would cause what I believe to be substantial delays in development of the project itself. As for trolley assisted truck, all of that is possible, but it is best facilitated with the installation of, say, a power line. Now, a power line that we're talking about would be sourced out of the community of Zaya, which has a large hydroelectric dam there and does have excess capacity that could support the operation.
Are you going to include a ruble-dollar exchange rate sensitivity within your updated cash flow model?
At this point in time, we don't see an immediate reason for it, because the ruble has held its own between 70 and 75 per dollar. But we do run different sensitivity analyses, and those sensitivity analyses include the price of say, nickel and copper. If you take a look at the trade-off study between metallurgical recovery versus, say, dollars per pound of metal, if you have a 10% reduction in metallurgy and a 10% reduction in dollar, you get the same answer. So in some ways, you can derive that number by examining those sensitivity analyses. But obviously, it's when we would see, that would be something we would consider when we would see a shift in the ruble-dollar imbalance.
Within the presentation earlier this year, Robin said that the company may become a tier 1 asset when in production. How does the company believe that this may be achieved? Is it an increase in the nickel price or an increase in annual production? Or is it a combination of the two?
It's sustainability of the operation. That's what's important. Once you have reached your production, are you in the upper echelon of the reporting companies, and are you sustaining that production? That's the main item for a tier 1 project.
Why should I invest in Amur as opposed to another junior nickel mine?
We're one of the largest we will be one of the largest nickel operations in the world. The other thing is that we are located right next door to the largest nickel consuming nation in the world, as well as copper. China is about 700 kilometers away from us. We can access it by rail. One of the really important aspects are accomplishments that have been undertaken by the Russian-Chinese government is the construction of a bridge near Blagoveshchensk. In the past, what we were looking at is transporting all our concentrate or product about 1,700 kilometers along rail, which would go first to the east and then south towards Vladivostok. Whereas if with the Blagoveshchensk bridge, we don't even have to leave the state of Amur, we can just head straight south and go into the Chinese markets. So there is a good opportunity for us to take advantage of growing infrastructure, that we are looking at an electronic vehicle market that is driving the price up well beyond the $6 that was used that's being used in the Taiyo at this point in time. We're also seeing a drop in the nickel inventories in both China and in London especially. It's down tremendously over the last year. So all of these are positive benefits of the project and placing it into production.
What downstream processing options are available to Kunmanye ore? Is the sulfur too high for hydromet? And is a captive smelter still a possibility to improve the payability of the nickel and capture some of the cobalt value?
There are a series of opportunities and upside potential for processing options at Kunmanye. The first in the base case is the generation of 2 concentrates, a nickel concentrate and a copper concentrate, and selling them into the Chinese, Korean, or Japanese markets. That's the first one. It's the basic step. That step has to be done for all ensuing options. Then we have the opportunity that we could build a furnace or a flash smelter ourselves and process that concentrate and reduce it down to a low-grade matte or a high-grade matte. It's expensive, but it's doable. We've taken a look at the numbers in the past and have come to the conclusion that this is an opportunity that needs to be assessed. In addition, there's been some recent work that's been done by various nickel companies that have very similar concentrate to what we have. And their test work that has indicated that they can make a mixed, an MHP product. And in the MHP product, you're looking at an acid leaching system where you then electrowin the final product, the nickel, the copper, cobalt, and the PGMs and the precious metals. So that process is being tested and looked at very closely right now. And we note that our ores are almost the same as the other ores that are presently being placed, that are presently being used to generate an MHP product. The advantage of an MHP product is you're battery ready. And that is a very key point. Battery ready nickel sells at a premium.
And in relation to that, when does battery test work start?
We have the samples already developed from the Gipro nickel work. We also have a whole bunch more core that's available. We're taking a look at our chemistry right now to see how well it matches some of these processes. And we will ultimately have to run a bench scale test on it. So, and that's something that we plan to undertake next year.
What upfront payment from a copper stream would be typical for Commagne's quantity of copper? And when are these funds typically available? Are they only available when all other commercial lenders have committed?
The upfront streaming for any metals, in our case copper, which would be the most readily streamable, is very much like the offtake agreement. Once you lock it in, and once you're there, that does limit the players that are available to the project. Now, it can generate substantial revenues that allow a company to advance the project itself. But at this point in time, locking in a copper stream or a nickel stream agreement at this point in time would be premature and possibly cause more complications by tensioning any potential deals that we'd be looking at.
What is the potential impact from any planned changes to the royalty regime from 2022?
I'm not sure that all the years that I've been there, they've never changed the royalty, and I'm assuming you're talking the metals tax royalties. I haven't seen any changes in it, so I really wouldn't comment about what the potential impact would be.
The Comagne Taiyo submitted for review RNS on the 20th of August stated key portions of the report remain to be translated from Russian. Upon completion of translation, a comparative analysis of the results generated by Oriole for the Taiyo and the independently compiled February 2019 PFS will be provided. As such, please could you confirm whether the translation from Russian has now been completed? If so, why has the comparative analysis of the results not been provided to date? And when will it be?
The original draft that was submitted to the GKZ for their calculation of reserves has been translated. There have been significant changes by the GKZ during this period in time. So once we have the final result from the GKZ, a full translation of the document will be readily utilized to update all the new numbers and provide everything. To update it now at this late date is not providing a good reflection of what the actual numbers are as they're being developed right now.
Within the RNS dated the 20th of August 2021, it states open pit mining operating costs per ton, including waste, totals $14.79. All other costs per ton total $33.25 per ore ton. This would appear to be a significant increase. Can you explain?
The development of the open pit scenario, a lot of that increase is related to the fact that we are now generating a copper product, which we were not generating before. So that means there's additional costs to separate the copper from the nickel, which actually done as the first step, and it takes 3 to 5 steps to get to the final product, which is about a concentrate that contains about 25% copper. So there's a lot of operating costs associated with that, and splitting it away from the nickel itself. So that is part of the cost itself. There's additional electrical costs that are required, and so what we're seeing is a mining cost as well of about say a 10-to-1 stripping ratio, which is open pit only. In the future, that may be reduced a bit, but yes, most of the cost increases related to the ability of ourselves to generate that final revenue generator of the copper.
And final question. The Coudminier production license awarded RNS dated on the 22nd of May 2015 states the license grants our wholly owned subsidiary Taiyo Coudminier the rights to recover all value from the mineral defined to be present at Coudminier. Please can you confirm that there are no stipulations or restrictions within the awarded license that would prevent either the takeover of Amur or the sale of Taiyo Coudminier to another non-Russian company?
Well, there's nothing, I mean, there's nothing to stop anybody from running a hostile takeover. I haven't seen it yet, but we would probably notice it with a tremendous amount of buying activity. So, which would drive the price up. So there is nothing in the license that would preclude any of that from happening.
Thank you, Robin. That's all we've got time for. Would you like to provide any closing comments?
Yes, it's what I would like to do is take advantage of this opportunity that we have to thank all the shareholders for their patience. It's always good to have these kinds of sessions, and I'd like to try and get them accomplished and done on a more frequent basis, and so that we can update our website, get out and have more, in spite of the COVID virus, face-to-face sessions and meetings. It's in my opinion, it's overdue. And I thank everybody for their time.
Thank you very much, Robin.